Hi everyone and welcome back. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And since last 2-3 weeks I was not posting any latest video, but now I come up with the latest playlist on the GraphQL, playlist on all different kind of ORMs in the Node.js, and we'll also talk about Kubernetes, the Neo4j, and everything from the latest technical stack. Okay, so this playlist will primarily talk about the GraphQL things. So if you talk about the GraphQL ecosystem, that is totally exploding these days. We have a lot of new libraries are coming and a lot of new frameworks are coming that is supporting the GraphQL client, GraphQL server, all these things. So if you talk about simple GraphQL, you can create a simple GraphQL server on top of Express. You can use Apollo, you can use Yoga, you can use different kind of libraries to build a simple GraphQL server. So we are going to talk about all those things. So this playlist is primarily going to talk about all these different libraries. We have GQL, Type GraphQL, we have GraphQL iOS, FastQL, Nano GraphQL, Prisma, which is kind of the latest technology, and it is known as a lightweight ORM for the Node.js connecting to all different database. And there is a Yoga, which is a GraphQL, which is a library helping us to create a GraphQL server. URQL, Neo4j GraphQL, which is supporting the integration with the Neo4j and expose the data in the GraphQL queries and the mutation. Apollo is already a popular stack. We are using Apollo client, Apollo server. We are using Apollo server to create a GraphQL server, right? So GraphQL libraries are like a lot of libraries are there. If we talk about this GraphQL Hub, they have their own set of libraries they are using. Apollo stack has its own thing, Apollo client, Apollo server. Prisma is coming with a simple ORM, but it has a nice integration with the GraphQL servers. Okay, you are writing GraphQL server, talk to the Prisma will take care of getting the data from the all different database. And also Prisma is providing a nice and clean database client that is totally different in the Node.js world. So we are going to use all these different libraries like Type GraphQL library with a simple TypeScript. We have these Neo4j GraphQL talking to the Neo4j for the GraphQL queries. Yoga is a library which is helping us to build a GraphQL server, and there are some app sync, Apollo client for the AWS and all these things. So this playlist is primarily going to talk about the GraphQL libraries, GraphQL ecosystem, GraphQL client, GraphQL server, what all different libraries you can use to build your GraphQL application. Like we are going to use a Yoga and Apollo stack, and then we are going to take a look onto this GraphQL Hub, and whole lot of this GraphQL ecosystem. So it's going to be massive because we are going to talk to different ORMs with the help of Prisma. I mean, Prisma will talk to the different database, and we can also use different Node.js ORMs. Like we are writing a GraphQL server in the Apollo, and then I need to get the data from the database using SQLize, using typeorm, using Next, or using ORM2. These different ORM libraries will help us to get the data from database, and GraphQL queries and mutation will help us to expose the data through the GraphQL client. We'll talk about GraphQL authorization, GraphQL pagination in the GraphQL, how to do the aggregation of data using writing the different schema definitions, queries and mutations and subscriptions. So it's going to be very big, and it's totally new. I mean, I don't have a playlist talking all these things together, so it's going to be massive for my subscribers. Okay, stay tuned guys. Thanks everyone. Hi everyone and welcome back. Welcome to my another brand new playlist, which is going to talk about GraphQL and all about GraphQL ecosystem, GraphQL in the context of Node.js, and with the different providers. Like we are going to talk about the Prisma, Apollo, Yoga, and all these different GraphQL clients and server. Okay, so what is the primary agenda of this particular playlist? We are going to talk about Apollo, Prisma, Yoga, and different GraphQL frameworks which are available in JavaScript world. Okay, so our primary focus will be on these different sections. Okay, if we talk about what all we are going to talk about is First, we will try to understand the GraphQL. I already have created few playlists. If you want to have a look how GraphQL works, I have covered GraphQL with Apollo, GraphQL with the basic Express application. Like there is Express GraphQL, or if you want to implement it with Apollo, then there is Apollo GraphQL server, or there is a Yoga is another library using which also you can create a GraphQL server. So there are many ways. So first of all, we will try to understand GraphQL schema, queries, mutations, subscriptions without any kind of database. Like with a simple JSON we are going to play with. Then we will understand how to write a query, mutation, and subscription. That will give us the simple insights about the type, schema definitions and all. Once that is done, we are going to have an integration with the database. Like mutations and query. Query will fetch the data from the database. Mutations will mutate the data, mutate the database state, like update, delete, insert, all these things. Then it's all about all different libraries we are going to cover, which is like Neo4j GraphQL, RQL, GQL. We have Apollo server, Apollo GraphQL server, GraphQL. Type GraphQL is another library which is heavily on the TypeScript side of writing a GraphQL server in TypeScript. Then there is a Yoga, which is another library to create a GraphQL server, where you are just providing the schema files and just creating these mutations and queries. Okay, so we'll talk about GraphQL authorization, GraphQL API pagination, how GraphQL can connect with the Prisma, and Prisma is like a ORM layer, can do the insert, update, delete in the database. So your database entities can be as simple as a simple CRUD operation, or as complex as simple shopping cart application we can build. We have the product, we have the cart, we have the user. These kind of relationship we can maintain, and we can choose one of the ORM, TypeORM, Sequelize, Prisma, or Next as a query builder. If you don't want to use a heavy ORM, we can use Next. So all these things I'm going to cover in the playlist. So I'm already covering another playlist which is talking about ORM, or entity object relational mapping, right? And there are multiple libraries: Sequelize, TypeORM, and Next, ORM2, and another is a Prisma, right? So if you are going through that playlist, that will also help you, and through this playlist you will also understand how to expose the data through the GraphQL queries and mutation, because that ORM playlist is talking about how to fetch the data from different database using different ORM, and that is purely REST. The only difference is here we are going to talk about GraphQL. So only the difference is there I will be talking about REST, here I will be talking about GraphQL. So GraphQL, here we will be mainly focused on the query, mutation, and subscription, how to actually hit it from the postman, how to expose the query and mutation. There we are going to talk about the basic REST APIs, which is going to do the complex calculation of the data with the help of the TypeORM, or maybe with the simple MySQL postgres query you are going to hit to the database. Okay, so this is my main focus for these two different playlists. One is talking about the ORMs in the data in the Node.js, because people are familiar with the different ORM, they have a different perception. So we will also do a relative comparison where to go. Okay, I just wanted to write a simple CRUD. Why you need a ORM? You can write a simple SQL queries. Okay, but when you wanted to manage the migration seeders, let's use ORM for that. But rest you can write a SQL query, or you can use this Next as a query builder if you don't wanted to write a plain SQL queries. Okay, because this is lightweight, this is not creating wrapper classes. Like Next is a query builder, simple query builder, but you want a TypeORM for the relationship management, one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. You don't want it to write any query builder thing and all, then you can use TypeORM. Still you have to use some utility methods to do the join, to do the select and all these queries with the help of TypeORM also, because TypeORM is just a custom wrapper. But when you need to write the complex queries, complex join, one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, you still have to figure out how to fetch the data from multiple tables. Similarly, Sequelize is a popular one, TypeORM is popular with the TypeScript, Prisma is something which is totally new, Next is very popular for the query builder. Okay, and so there is a lot of things going on with the GraphQL and REST API. So my both playlist will give you a lot of insights, and I will be providing the GitHub link where I will be talking about, okay, this is a project, GraphQL with the Yoga, with the Postgres, GraphQL Yoga, or maybe Apollo server with the MySQL and typeorm. Okay, there may be a number of permutation combinations. Okay, let's get started. Thanks everyone. Hi everyone and welcome back. And here we are going to start our GraphQL series, and first we are going to talk about the Yoga, a GraphQL library to create a GraphQL APIs. Okay, so we are going to start with very basics, then intermediate, then advanced, and we will talk about GraphQL with the Prisma, GraphQL with the SQLized, typeorm, GraphQL with the pagination, authentication, authorization, and the testing the GraphQL APIs, right? So all these things we are going to cover in the whole series. So first we are going to start with the very beginner, okay, and we will start this with the setting up with our basic project, right? And what we are going to use, GraphQL Yoga as a library. You can also use Apollo GraphQL, and we are going to use ES6 Node.js, like we are going to use the import syntax. So we need Babel. So what we did is in the package.json, we just added these two dev dependencies, Babel CLI and Babel preset env. That's it, and the GraphQL Yoga. These three libraries, nothing else. And how to create a basic GraphQL server with the Yoga library. I'm not going to cover very basic like what is GraphQL and all these things. I have already covered a lot of playlists talking about GraphQL, REST, what is good, when should we use what. There is nothing bad and nothing good. It's just about the use case. On some places the REST is always better. On some particular use case the GraphQL is better. Okay, so here if you just see, I just have an index.js file in the whole project. And what this index.js file is talking about, simple bare-bone GraphQL server. So what I did is I imported GraphQL Yoga, I got the GraphQL server, and I'm feeding only two things in the GraphQL server. One is a type definition and another is a resolver. So whenever we talk about GraphQL, we are going to talk about these two terms a lot. GraphQL server, type definitions, resolvers, query, mutation, subscription, and simple GraphQL server, right? So if you see, the type definitions are nothing but you can relate it with the TypeScript types, right? Where we are defining the types, enums, interface, classes and all. But little bit different here. These schema means we are creating the types which you are going to expose through the query and mutation. These are the resolvers. Resolver is an object where you will define the actual implementation for your query and mutation. When I say, so GraphQL can be divided into three things: query API is where you are requesting a data. Mutation API is where you are updating the state of a data. Subscription API is where you are listening to a change happening to a particular data set, right? So these three things GraphQL exposes. In this hello world example, I'm just exposing a simple query. Here you can write mutation, subscription, the type definitions, and the actual implementation will be defined inside a resolvers. That's it. Now you just pass both the objects into the GraphQL server and it will start. This same implementation you can do with the GraphQL Express server or using Apollo GraphQL server. Here we are using GraphQL Yoga. There are many libraries are available right now which does the same thing, that will help you to create your GraphQL server. Directly or indirectly they will ask you, okay, what is your type definition, what are the resolvers you wanted to expose, and what we do is we can just do npm run start based on package.json definition, npm run start, and it should be able to start our server on a defined port. Okay, once this server is started, we can do a lot of things. Here currently this is doing nothing. It is having one simple plain query which is hello. So this query will be exposed when you try to see this GraphQL like REST. In the REST we look for the Swagger APIs. Okay, what is a get, put, post, delete API. Similarly, in the GraphQL, it also provides you the GraphQL browser console. Okay, we can use different add-ons which are available on the browser. So you just pass this and you can access all the query and mutations available. We have only hello query here. Okay, stay tuned. So this is a very basic setup. You can actually copy this from the GitHub. Simple 3 libraries. GraphQL Yoga is a library to create a GraphQL server. I'm using this Babel CLI and Babel R. This file is required because this is what will tell GraphQL to define the presets. Okay, how to compile, what to compile. Okay, so let's see in the next video. We'll expose it on the browser using some add-on. We will see what kind of documentation we are getting, same as Swagger. So GraphQL is nothing but an API interface, little bit different than the REST, because in the REST you have a different HTTP verbs, get, put, post, delete. Here we will talk only about post, and we will be send a query and mutation and subscription through that post API to our GraphQL server, and we will receive the data in the same way we were receiving in the REST APIs. Okay, let's talk that in the next video. Hi everyone and welcome back. So this is the simple example we have done in the last video, and I'm using one add-on on the Chrome browser that will give you everything you need. You send a request. This is your simple documentation. Okay, I have only single query, hello, and you can do a click here. This will add that query for you. You don't need to even type anything, and here you can just enter your name and then send this request. Okay, so it is just adding hello and giving you the message back. So this is like a query we have written. So, and this documentation is like a Swagger here. It is telling you what all queries you have, what all mutations, subscription, what all different types you need to define. Okay, everything is here, and you just need to you can execute the queries here. Okay, now what we are going to do is let's move to a bit advanced. Okay, here we are creating only a simple GraphQL server, right? But we are not going to write this simple hello world example every time. What we will do is we will start defining these type definitions. Type definitions means, okay, let's say I have written the CRUD operation of user, CRUD operation for post. So there I have a get, put, post, delete operations, but here I don't have all these things, right? So how can I replicate the same kind of scenarios here through the query and mutation? Mutation will create user, create post, update user, update post, delete user. All these things we can also be able to do with the help of GraphQL. So first of all, this is the type definition. Okay, and in this type definitions we are going to put all the things which we need, right? So this is the type query. Before that we will define all the types which we need. Okay, like I have a type user, and inside type user I have few things. Okay, I have ID, I have name. All these parameters you can add. Name is of type string. Okay, then I have an email which is also of type string, and then age, let's say this is of type int. Okay, so I have created this as a type. You can call it as a model, which we are going to expose maybe through query and mutation. Okay, then let's say there is another is a type, which is type is post. I will not cover more these basic things because these are, we already know what all these about. So in the post we have a title which is of type string, body which is of type string, and we have published, and which is of type boolean. Okay, now there is a meaning of these types: id, string, boolean, object. All these are actually types. So this is the parent type, and these are the types of each and every property that we are defining inside a post and user. Now query, inside query I can have, okay, let's say get me. This can be one query, and what it is doing is it is just returning what this query is going to return. This query is going to return user type. Okay, then another query I have is post, that is going to return the type post. Okay, so this is my type definitions. Now when I look at the resolvers, I need to define the resolvers for the query and mutation. Here currently I have only query, but here you can define mutations also, and then we need to take care of query and mutation both inside resolvers. For now we have these query, and query is talking about, okay, there are two queries, this should match. Okay, I have a get me and post. So let's say get me, which is a function inside a query. What it is doing, let's return something here. So inside a query object we have a get me, and get me is just returning a simple object, and object has the same things. We have id of type string, and we have name, and we have email. Okay, whatever the email, right? So we have name, email, everything here. So this is my first query here, get me, and then another query I have is a post. So put a comma here, this is my another query post, and this is going to return the data regarding the post. Here in the post we have all these types: id, title, body. Okay, id, title, body, and we have published flag, which is, let's say, false. Okay, what I did is I created a type definitions, and I define these queries get me and posts here. Okay, now we can restart the server, or we can add a watcher which will keep restarting this. So we have post and we have get me. We just need to take care id, name, email. id, name, email, these are required things. Age is optional. In the post all are required, so we have to define all. I mean, you will get an error if you are not returning the required type from there. Okay, now we have extended this example. Now we have multiple types. Let's say, let's reload this. Now we got these two queries, right? Add this to the query, get me, we can run this. Okay, I got the data, right? And another query I have is post, and this is another query I have, and it is giving me the post data, right? The representation is still a JSON object. Inside data I have post object that is giving me everything. And you can see whenever you are running a query, what we are passing the post, because post is not taking any argument. If you talk about simple get me, right, that get me is not taking any argument, and it is of type query, so we wrapped it inside a query and then get me, right? There will be a cases where we have to pass the user id and you have to return the data of selected user. Then the query will be here, you will be passing the argument, but currently it's not matching because this is not according to the spec, and you just send it, we will get the data accordingly. Okay, here we are requesting age, but that's null, but now we are requesting only id, name, email. Okay, so this is how we define the type definitions and the resolvers, and once the server is started, we can test that through our this GraphQL console. Okay, thanks everyone. Now in the next further videos, we will talk more about the queries, mutations, these types and resolvers, because that is all about basics, and we are not going to have an integration with the database. Let's say we have the collection of users. You create a new user, we will push that into an array, you delete, update, all these. We are going to play with just a collection of array objects. Okay, and then we will write these queries and mutations.